Hey guys, RagingRaptor here, and I welcome you to a new World of Tanks video. And today I have a new how to penetrate video on the Object 268 version 4. This is due to the fact that somebody on my German channel, Me Steinstoff to be precise, asked for it, and here we go. The Type 5 heavy how to penetrate video will come later. I have the data back at home and not here in my university home. So yeah, the first tank which is going to fight Object 268 version 4 is the Jagdtiger 88. For the people which are asking why exactly I'm taking this tank, it is due to the fact that many tier 8 medium tanks have comparable penetration with AP and mostly with AP. And the Jagdtiger 88 is a little bit easier to use than the Panther 88 due to the fact that it has better DPM and more accuracy. So please don't lynch me for taking a tank which could normally not see the Object 268 version 4, but many other tanks have the similar gun stats. So as you can see, with 203mm of penetration, we are almost having no chance at all in penetrating the lower plate of the Jagdtiger 88, which is obviously a little bit sad because it should be a weak spot, but let's be honest, super heavy tanks which are really slow and totally not driving at 55 kilometers per hour should never have weak spots. That's how it should be. The middle part of the Object 268 version 4, you can simply forget about shooting at that point. It's 300mm thick, it's angled downwards, it gives it roughly an effective armor thickness of 350mm. The cupola is, to be happy enough, 250mm thick, but as you can see, as a tier 8 tank, you are not gonna penetrate that. With gold, you have roughly a 50% chance, I would say, depending on what type of gold you have. With the Jagdtiger 88, you will not be able to penetrate the Object 268 version 4 frontally in any particular way. And I was looking for other weak spots. I was looking for like cheeky weak spots, like on the Type 5 Heavy, the rangefinder, or on the, on the Badger, this small little spot between the gun, but I could not find anything. The only more or less reliable thing you can do as a top or as a flop tier tank is detracking the Object 268 version 4, as you can see right here. And I'm trying to get into the angle right now. I'm still in an auto bounce angle, but as soon as we are getting out of this auto bounce angle, we should be able to penetrate it. Why? Because the Object 268 version 4 has 80mm of side armor. It's not as bad as the it is not as good as the 100mm of side armor of the 705A, but it is decent enough. So it is better than the one on the E3. And the E3 is much slower and has comparable armor if you think about it. Yes, the cupola is a little bit stronger, but yeah. The sad part about the Object 268 version 4 is the lower side armor is still 80mm thick, and on some tanks you can shoot upwards on this sloped piece from below when it's like coming up from a hill to detrack him with damage. This is not possible on the Object 268 version 4 because this tank has 80mm of armor down there. So it is basically the best tank possible to drive over hills because you can't get detracked with damage. And a more annoying part about this vehicle is, even though if you're having its side armor, you need to watch out. If you hit badly, you can bounce off like it is on the IS-7, and if you are unlucky, you will hit the frontal part where the Soviet star is shining bright. And yeah, the lower part is still 80mm thick. This part you need to be careful with, and the upper part, yes, this one right here, which I'm showing at, is weak. It's like 45mm thick, and the one with the star is 220mm thick. So luckily for us, the Object 268 has a really short superstructure, so it is actually pretty darn hard sometimes to miss that shot onto the side, especially when it's wobbling around like hell. But if you get the Object 268 version into its side, you should feel lucky. Why exactly? Because it has a really slow turn rate, and we were able to blow it up. So yeah, overall, as a tier 8 tank, good luck. You will need it. You will especially need it to fight against the Object 268 version 4. The only thing you can do is basically go YOLO onto him. Next up we have the M48 Patton. It has 268mm of APCR penetration. This is luckily enough to penetrate its lower plate, which is only 100mm thick but at a steep angle. The upper part which I'm aiming at is also 100mm thick, and you will have a hard time penetrating there, except if, as you could see there, the Object 268 is rocking around or wobbling around. For some reason it has really good suspensions and it wobbles and rocks around pretty solidly, so in a decent enough angle you are actually able to penetrate this upper front plate when this tank is stopping. Because then the suspension or the mass of the tank will press the tank forward, and it will rock or move down a little bit forward, and the frontal plate, this 100mm frontal plate, will be able for you to penetrate, as it is no more in the outbounds angle. Other than that, this is also the part you want to shoot at if you are loading heat ammunition. The cupola is most of the time the easier part, yes, but it is much smaller. So if you are standing above the Object 268 version 4, it is much better to actually shoot at this with heat at this 100mm upper front plate. Once again, the big lower plate, you can forget about that. It's simply impossible to penetrate with heat, especially only if it's 330mm of thickness. It's not impossible, obviously you can roll high, but it's really darn heavy. So my best guess once again is to shoot at the upper plate and try your best there. Well, the superstructure of this vehicle is kind of strong as well. And one more thing before I forget it, if you are looking below the tank, you can see that a lot of those parts is 20mm thick. So if this tank is driving up from a hill, and here you can see the 80mm of armor, so you won't be able to penetrate this tank. If it is coming up from a hill, it is the best to shoot underneath it, try to snap its underbody. And you can see with APCR we have roughly 50% chance to penetrate the cupola, or the rangefinder in that case. It has a cupola on the right side, which I'm trying to aim at, but it's also 250mm thick, so it's not a real weak spot, so you can forget about hitting that. So right now we are still one APCR shell in. You can see we have roughly 10mm more penetration average than anything else. Now we are loading heat shells, and we are trying to penetrate him somewhere. You can see 350mm of effective armor in this big lower plate. The superstructure is also at 340mm, so with only 330mm of HEAT penetration, we will have a really hard time. The upper front plate is also still thick enough. If we would drive a little bit closer, it would be much easier for us to penetrate, but you can see it is probably the easiest part to penetrate when you are not looking at the cupola. The cupola with heat is much more reliable to penetrate. 250mm against 330mm of average heat penetration is much more consistent. Sadly enough, I got really unlucky. We should have a 50% chance to penetrate the upper front plate, but we didn't. So now we are working our way to... Now, first we have still a look. As you can see, the upper front plate is only 100mm thick, and this is where we are most of the time able to penetrate this vehicle. And, well, if this tank is standing hull down, it will be super hard. But if you are really lucky, you can clip that lower plate, and you are able to overmatch it quite easily. Other than that, this tank has no apparent spot where you can overmatch it with standard tanks. The only tanks which are possible to overmatch we will see afterwards. And this is the Jagdpanzer 100, the FV4005 Stage 2 and the 183. It is 55mm thick on the engine deck and the roof, so you can forget about it. And you can see we are in a Super Conqueror, which has 10 degrees of negative gun depression, or 10 degrees of gun depression. If we are able to get onto his upper plate there, we are able to penetrate it, as the auto bounce angle is not existing anymore. But now, because we are pushing the tank slightly upwards, because he is rushing at us, we are able to hit the lower plate. Otherwise, we have no chance at all. So in a face hug situation, the best bet for you is to try and wait and get this upper front plate, or load gold and clip that cupola, because once again 260mm or 259mm of our armor penetration will have it really hard for you to consistently penetrate 250mm of armor. It is roughly a 50-50 chance, so you can cut your DPM in half. If the Object 268 version 4 is standing still for some apparent reason, you can see we can easily clip his upper front plate, and the good thing about that is you can kill its engine, which happened to Mango Killer in that specific moment. He couldn't move anymore, he was just standing there, and lucky for us we were able to kill him. So yeah, one last thing or one last tank is coming up, and this will be the mighty Jagdpanzer E 100. The big problem is, even though, before we go to Jagdpanzer E 100, even though we have a flat vehicle with 10 degrees of negative or 10 degrees of gun depression, we were still not able in a phase hug to consistently hit the lower plate. The Jagdpanzer on the other hand has it much easier, as it has many spots where it can overmatch the Object 268 version 4. One of which being the engine deck and the other one being the roof. It is 55mm thick, you can make the math there. 55mm times 3 is 165mm, so everything above 165mm of caliber has auto penetration on those specific positions. And you can see it right here, we are aiming at the upper front plate and we are penetrating it without a problem. Even though our Jagdpanzer E 100 has 300 or 299mm of AP penetration, it is still advisable for you to either go for those special weak spots or those special engine deck parts, or go for the cupola, or simply shoot heat. If you shoot heat, the Object 268 version 4's armor is almost non-existent. We were a little bit unlucky with the rolls here. He survives with 30 HP, even though our average damage should kill him. And those parts, again, I can just say it's not a good idea to shoot there. Once again, it's not a really good idea to shoot at the parts where those stars are. It is really not a good idea to shoot there. If you are by some apparent reason playing the Type 5 Heavy, first of all, you are a douche. Second of all, it is advisable to not shoot at the tank's gun or the cupola. It is advisable to try to shoot underneath it, because then you will splash up upon those strong or this weak 20mm of armor. You could see we bounced, even though he rocked around. It is hard to hit the tank or this plate, specifically when he's rocking around. It needs a lot of skill, while driving the Object 268 version 4 doesn't. So yeah, this is it. This is how to penetrate the Object 268 version 4. TLDW, Tier 8 tanks, you are shit out of luck. You can forget penetrating the tank frontally, basically. You need to shoot gold and pray that you hit the cupola or the lower plate. Other tanks, shoot gold at the cupola, press the 2 key, waste your credits, get premium account and make Wargaming happy. I can't say it anyway else. Thanks for watching, guys.